My lead source tonight is the New York Times White House correspondent Maggie Haberman, who is the author of Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America. And Maggie joins me now. Maggie, I think on the Jay Powell front, I want to know if you're reporting in your sense from inside the administration is that this new focus that we are seeing, not just from the budget chief, but also other top aides inside the White House, is that they're searching basically for a legal avenue to try to oust Jay Powell from his job.
I think there's no question that they are searching as to whether there is a legal out. I don't know that they want to pull that lever yet, Caitlin, but this has been a slow roll toward this point. A lot of the president's advisors, as you know, not that many months ago, 2, were, assuring people that he was not serious about getting rid of Jay Powell. The president himself then said he wasn't going to do it. But he was, sort of reading the stage directions out loud in June when he said, I've tried everything. I've tried being nice. I call him names. I call him every name in the book. I can't get him to do what I want, which is lowering rates. And so this is at minimum an extension of a pressure campaign, and it's a big one. But whether it ultimately leads to something that could have a pretty deleterious effect on the markets, i.e. firing him, we'll see.
Well, and what's interesting is Kevin Hassett, who we showed that we were questioning at the White House after he did an interview earlier, he is someone who before has stressed the independence of the Fed and kind of said once, during Trump round 1 that there was no question the president could not oust the Fed chair from that role. That seems to have changed in terms of how the president has been making that argument. And also Kevin Hassett has emerged as someone who is potentially a contender to fill that role when it becomes available next year. We know for sure, but potentially sooner than that.
He is a contender. I don't think he is a top contender at this point, Caitlin. Obviously, everything in Trump world could change. There are a couple of names who the president has been talking about privately for a while. Always worth reminding people, and you may have said it before, but my audio was cutting out for a second. The president appointed Jay Powell. This was not somebody who was imposed upon him. This was an appointee of his previously. There are other people who President Trump has been thinking of as possible replacements, but I think his idea is that if he can't badger, I'm skeptical he will fire Powell. He might, obviously anything is possible, but in the meantime he is going to make his life as miserable as possible, or at least as miserable as the president perceives it could be, behaving this way.
Well, and then with what's happening with Brazil, obviously there's a massive surplus that the United States has with Brazil when it comes to trading. There's already questions about if this 50% tariff actually goes into place, what that's going to mean. But I think what we're seeing here is different in terms of the tariff battles he's having with other countries, and that he is drawing a very straight through line between the investigation and trial of an ally of his that was a former leader of Brazil into whether or not the current leader is going to have to deal with 50% tariffs from the United States.
What you're seeing, Caitlin, is the fact that, the president who has talked about tariffs on and off for many years, mostly in earnest over the last decade and slightly plus, does not view tariffs the way economists view tariffs. He views tariffs, and he would talk about this privately with people during the 2024 campaign, as a source of immense power. He discovered just how much power he might be able to have when he was president in the first term, and now he has advisors who are letting him do that in a way that he felt like he was stymied before. There are a lot of advisors who also worry he is taking an approach that is raising legal questions and that is maximalist in a way that is creating confusion. But it's not an economic tool or solely an economic tool. It's just a tool. It's an instrument to try to get what he wants.
That's interesting that you've heard from advisors who have questions about the process here, because that is the biggest difference that we're seeing. And it's worth stepping back and looking at it from how he operated in the office in round 1 to operating this time around, finding potentially a legal justification or a bone to pick with Jay Powell, then also using this kind of rationale for threatening tariffs against a country like Brazil.
Yeah, look, in term 1, the way that the president always looks at things, and you hear him say this out loud, is the experts warned that XYZ bad consequence was going to happen, the sky would fall if I did a certain thing. That didn't happen. Things ended up going along fine, and nothing terrible happened, so I wasn't wrong. And it is true. He was warned over and over again that there was going to be a disaster if he went ahead with tariffs, especially as he was pursuing his tax cuts bill in his first term. The markets came back. There was not a huge crash, but it was a different, the tariffs were much more surgically applied than what we're seeing now. This is very different. And the lesson he has learned is he is going to try to do as much as he can. And frankly, I don't think he even has done as much as he wants, which is why you're now seeing a renewed effort.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maggie Haberman, as always, thank you for your excellent reporting. Joining me now, two other deeply sourced White House insiders. Dasha Burns is White House bureau chief for Politico. Shelby Talcott is White House correspondent for Semafor. And I think when it comes to what this looks like with Jay Powell, I mean, the White House has made clear they're not even shying away from the attacks on Jay Powell anymore. The other aides are kind of doing his duty in terms of, now we saw Will Scharf and James Blair, two of his top aides, joining this committee, also raising questions about what Powell said to Congress, focusing on the renovations happening at the Fed's chair headquarters, which I don't think was a concern that I'd heard from any of them even just a few weeks ago.
No, look, I mean, to Maggie's point, there are a couple of things happening. One is he is trying to make Powell's life miserable and turn the heat up. Number two, he's trying to paint Powell as the boogeyman. And that serves the purpose of also being able to deflect blame. Well, if the economy is having trouble, the Fed chair is not doing his job. He's not doing what he's supposed to. And Trump is very good at punting the blame and at creating the kind of the boogeyman that his base, certainly his supporters, and sometimes some folks in the middle can buy.
Yeah, Shelby, is that what you've heard from officials, that is a clear plan here, which is either try to make him so miserable that he leaves, which Jay Powell has said he's not going to do, or to just make his life suck, basically?
Well, I think it's no secret that's Donald Trump's strategy with anybody, not just Jerome Powell. We've seen in Congress, anytime a lawmaker goes against him, he has a concerted effort to publicly shame them and to publicly go after them, to turn his base against them. And in turn, that makes their life more difficult. And what Donald Trump has found, particularly with Republican lawmakers, is oftentimes that public pressure results in Donald Trump getting what he wants. And so he's clearly applying this sort of strategy that he has used for years to Jerome Powell, thinking, okay, Jerome Powell is not necessarily doing what I want. I'm going to apply this public pressure. I'm going to make his life miserable. It's worked in the past for him.
The question is, does it work now? I mean, Jay Powell is someone, for people who haven't watched, when he does his press conferences, he inevitably gets asked about this. And he says that if they fired him, he'd fight it. He's not someone who's saying, I'll just let this be and I'll go. He's saying he would fight it.
He's saying he would fight it, but he also doesn't lean into it, and he doesn't play the victim. And that's kind of the people that have had success with Trump's attacks is exactly that strategy, is deflect, don't take the bait.
Breaking overnight, a new twist in the trade war and a new attack on the Fed chair and his actual headquarters. The president announced he would place a new 35% tariff on Canadian goods on August 1st. As we have seen before, there are exemptions and questions about if it will actually go into effect as U.S. and Canadian officials negotiate. But it's the president's uncertain tariffs and economic uncertainty in general that has led Fed Chair Jerome Powell to hold back on dropping interest rates. This has infuriated the president, who has attacked Powell in all kinds of different ways. But now there's a brand new one, the likes of which we just haven't seen before. The White House budget director wrote a new letter to Powell claiming that Powell is now $700 million over budget on the Fed's $2.5 billion office renovation. OMB Director Russ Vought called it ostentatious and compared it to upgrading the Palace of Versailles. He told Powell, quote, "The president is extremely troubled by your mismanagement of the Fed." Let's get to CNN's Betsy Klein at the White House. And Betsy, I have to say, just the other day, the president was talking about gold leaf on the ceiling, yet now there are concerns about the ostentatious redecoration of the Fed. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's a sharp turn, John, but President Trump has long held contentious views on Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. He says he is not doing enough fast enough to lower interest rates, but this letter from the OMB really marks a significant intensification of this feud. This letter is essentially accusing Powell of breaking the law because of that planned office renovation here in Washington. And our colleague Kristen Holmes reports the president has replaced 3 members of what's really a Central Planning Commission for the federal government. Essentially, this oversees these kinds of renovations. He has installed 3 top loyalists, and they are now ratcheting up that scrutiny on Powell. But here is how Powell defended those renovations just last month.
There's no VPI dining room. There's no new marble. We took down the old marble, we're putting it back up. There are no new water features. There's no beehives, and there's no roof terrace gardens. Other than that, so all of the sort of inflammatory things that the media carried are either not in the current plan or just inaccurate.
Now, Powell's term ends in May of 2026, and there are major questions about whether the president can fire Powell. Really major legal questions there. But all of this letter could signal that the administration is laying the groundwork to remove Powell. But a White House official tells CNN they're not aware of any broader scheme to do so. Now, the president has floated replacements for Powell, including his Treasury Secretary as well as top economic advisor Kevin Hassett. Here's what Kevin Hassett said just yesterday when asked about all this.
Is the president having aides lay the groundwork to fire the Fed Chair Jay Powell with the questions about the building renovations?
I'm sorry, I don't have confidence to do that.
Have you been interviewed for the Fed Chair job?
Of course, we will be watching market reaction to all of this in just a couple of hours, John.
That was some pretty remarkable silence right there.